Hello, welcome to the Professional Artist. I am your guest host, Lazarus Chernik. Echo is at Rose City Comic Con this weekend. You are listening on 107.7, the United Public Radio Network out of New Orleans. This simulcast on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever fine art is sold. Haha, I think I'm updating that. Today, I want to talk about art families. The entire point of this channel is to promote artists and to uh, give people an idea of, to encourage them to, make a life out of art. And what I mean by art families isn't not, yes, you could have a family like mine in which, both myself and my wife and my kids are all artists and we are selling art. But more importantly, we find each other. Found families in the art world are a thing, and they are very, very important. The definition of being an artist is to be neurodivergent. I mean, we don't see the world the same way. We don't, and I mean literally, um, that not only do we maybe see things differently to begin with, um, we can have emotions and experiences that skew our perspective on events and symbols. But we also literally train ourselves to see shapes and lines and curves and colors in ways that the average person just doesn't. I mean, so it's a combination of nature and nurture. We do train ourselves that way, and that can make it interesting trying to relate to people outside of the art world. Um, there are, obviously there are exceptions, and there's not a single art world. Um, Fine artists have that's a world I don't have a huge amount of experience in, but I do know fine artists and I do know collectors and I do know galleries. So I will hesitate to make any generalizations or explanations, but that to be a successful fine artist, you do have to have the ability to communicate yourself to the outside world, as a person and not just as the painting or the sculpture or whatever. Obviously, that's what people buy, but in the fine art world, that the collectors of fine art, uh, a I'm gonna say a majority of fine art collectors are purchasing the art as well as the story. That they're not purchasing just to look at it. They wanna know what the artist's vision was, why they created it, and they wanna know it concrete. They wanna know factually. They wanna be able to talk to the artist directly, especially if they're laying down tens of thousands of dollars worth of art. Why is it like this? Why are what was your motivation? And so, fine artists, either through themselves or through someone that can help interpret for them, family members, agents, just supporters, will have to get this message out. And that's generally the fine art world. And so their families are going to be relatively going to be very, it's going to come out weird. Um, their families are going to be their close knit friends, the ones that they can trust the most. But they're also going to extend out into, their friends are going to extend out into certain collectors and certain gallery owners. But that type of friendship is more of the relationships, um, that you can build close relationships with collectors and with gallery owners and with things. That's absolutely possible. But you're gonna have a lot of close friends because, um, selling through galleries, um, requires trust and close relationships that you develop that are based off of consistent amounts of work. There's a professional relationship. But you're going to have fewer venues for those things than you do for instance, a convention artist. Convention artists and festival artists, um, they'll have anywhere between 20 and 50 shows a year that they go to. And so those they're that they can't, you know, make personal relationships with the people who run every single convention, every single festival. First of all, there's just no time to meet them. And then, collectors, you may run into same collectors over time at different places, which is cool. But for the most part, you will be encountering the same artists from convention to convention, from festival to festival. You're just going to run into them. And just over time, that familiarity builds up, and you're eventually going to start gravitating to people, especially if when you start out. Um, we started out taking Echo to a convention in Florida. That was the very first one. Now, we had done conventions before. And when I say conventions, I mean there are several different types of conventions where artists can sell. Generally, they're all themed. Okay. The themes that Echo was selling at best are Comic Cons and gaming conventions, specifically not gambling conventions, board gaming and role playing game conventions, costume conventions, pop culture conventions. Um, there are fantasy and science fiction conventions. There are other types. Obviously, you're not going to have too many artists at an accountant's convention or a dentist convention. I think that's that's certainly there are of course conferences and conventions. There are difference. When I talk, I never mean a conference. When I say con, I always mean a convention. um, sorry, I'm having a hard time looking at the camera, and yes, I am a little sick. The When we started out, we did a convention in Florida. We showed up with nothing except for art. We had no tablecloth. We had no sign. We had no racks. We had no display. I kid you not. We just went there, showed up. There was a white table, and we put a bunch of art down on the table as flat art, and it sold. And it sold well for a first time ever having no display whatsoever. It sold well. We were thrilled, and that's what began it. So, first of all, so you don't need to begin with anything to start at a convention. Okay. Yes, the displays are nice, but you need to figure out how you want to display and why you want to display and what you want to display. So we went to that first one, and during slow periods, or we took turns walking around the convention, looking at other artists, looking at how they were displaying. And there was another artist that we saw who was selling sexy art that was very high quality and had a good display, and he was incredibly friendly. And then we met him and asked him a few questions, and he was just completely open. Said, "Okay, you can go to the store and buy this. You can buy this. You get tablecloth, do this, and these racks you can get." I mean, they're not secrets, but it can be very intimidating to think, well, where do I get this stuff? Where do I go? What do I look at? We literally just asked, where did you get this? And they went, oh, I went to this website and I got this. Or I went to Target, and in the section of in their furniture section, they sell this. And they were very friendly. We got along. They introduced us to some other artists. We went out to dinner with them, and for the next year or two, we ended up hanging out with that person. There was a connection, a click. There weren't very many artists who did sexy stuff. that they respected Echo's art, we respected theirs, and we talked the same language, and you know that person had been around for a while, so they had already developed relationships with other people. So we ended up just kind of falling into their clique for a little bit. And then we met their clique and we hung out for them a little bit. But over time, we, our lives diverged from theirs. We ended up doing different conventions. Some of ours did better than theirs. Some of theirs did better than ours. So we started doing different ones. And we started meeting other people at different conventions. And some people that it was less about, bonding through art, but it would be like, you know, they would have something funky on their table or something funky art. We start talking and turned out that we had a lot of other things in common, and and again, you just meet these people over and over and over again repeatedly. And it becomes an art family, you know? And just like every family, that you're going to be closer to some people than to others. And there's also going to be, you're going to, have better experiences with some rather than others. And you might end up with, with a few bad experiences with some people because just for whatever reason, you just don't get along. But that you're not alone. Suddenly you can talk about the trials of creating art and meeting deadlines of struggling to, perfect your craft with people who will understand, even if it's not the same technique. You can understand when a cartoonist is talking about what they're doing, even though you're not a cartoonist. If you're an oil painter or if they're a sculptor, like the creative process still has the same challenges, you know. And then occasionally, if you meet somebody who has something similar, you can share with, what brushes do you use? What paints do you use? What material is this? You know, and these bonding experiences with people with a shared interest goes so far above, you know, a college experience or a high school experience where you're thrown in to a mix and your shared experiences are more social and communal. You just happen to live next to each other. When you have something literally that you can share, you can talk about, that's awesome. And then when we go to a gaming convention or RPG convention, we're gamers. So are all the artists who display there. They're all gamers too. Well, most of them. So so not only are they artists, they're gamers and they're game artists because they love both games and art. So now it doubles up. And sometimes again, just like cousins and second cousins, that you may not see for a while and then you get back together again, that you've got that bond. When you see them again, you can it just resurrects all over again because you get each other. It's a support group that we rarely get from our families. As I said, being an artist, being a creative is being neurodivergent. And that not everyone is neurodivergent in the same way. And there are families that don't understand, our passions in that way. Both of my parents, for example, they were both autistic. They both had their own passions. They did not share my passions at all. My mother was supportive, but she didn't. She, was supportive just generically. I mean, generically, that sounds bad. She was just supportive of anything I would do. My father was an engineer and very rigid. His level of his specific autism was, he rejected all fantasy. He rejected things. He would literally read instruction manuals for fun. He would tolerate certain science fiction until they got the science wrong, in his opinion. He appreciated documentaries. He watched histories. And here I am playing fantasy games and being imaginative and coming up with, different ways to spaceships and races and species and um, dragons. And he really did not appreciate it because he expected me to be like him, and that the world to and that his version of the world was that I would do the what he would I would do the architectural thing and follow the plan, to follow in his footsteps and take over his business as an engineer. And that didn't happen. I just could not do what he wanted me to do. Whether there's no way I could have done it. Not that I couldn't do the math. Of course I could. Not that I couldn't actually activate the machines. Of course I could. But his passion was literally for mechanics. His passion was for perfecting machines and how they operate. And mine wasn't. My passion was something else. It was in creating fantasies and telling stories, both visual and written. I've known so many people that I've talked to. I've met so many people. I've talked to them. I've read about them. Who they didn't go into art because their family wouldn't let them. They didn't go into music because their family couldn't let them. I know two people who were incredible musicians in high school, and just as they were graduating high school, their family said, "No, you are not getting your degree in music. You must get a degree in something where you're going to make money and you're going to support me in my old age." One was a classical guitarist, and one was was someone who's excellent at playing the trumpet. But the families went, "No, you are going to get a career. You are not going to, follow you're not going to follow your passion. You're not allowed." So with that, these stories are not rare. In fact, there was a gentleman who was just here a little bit earlier, and he started to tell me about in the gallery, started telling me about how he started, going to college for art, and he did 2 years, and his passion was he went to drawing, he did drawing, and then he went into painting, and he couldn't paint, and then he found 3D sculptures and things, and that was what his passion was. And yet he and I were able to bond in that short period of time because we understood what that type of passion to feel like was about. And we were able to support each other in that way. Yes, I'm sitting here in a gallery. Do I need his support? Yes, absolutely. I need his support. I need that emotional verification that there are people out there like me that care, and that I'm not so rare. And he needed that. He needed that support, saying, "Hey, you're valid. I completely understand. You're, that." And this is the most important part about found families and art families, supporting each other. Pardon me. I'm going to briefly segue. We were at some events occurred recently, within the last week or so. At Dragon Con last weekend, there was someone who submitted paintings to get accepted into the art show, or into the Artist Alley. Then showed up and set up their entire booth and filled it with AI generated images that were not what they had submitted. And Dragon Con kicked them out. And they were not nice about it. And everyone in the Artist Alley cheered. We were so the entire community rallied. Why? Because they're absolutely a fake. Absolutely 100% a fake. Not only are they not an artist, they don't care. They're not part of the community. To be part of the community, you have to know what it's like to create, know what it's like to have that passion. Our passion isn't to just show off, hey, look at this, look at this cool idea I had, give me money. Our passion isn't look how I can execute this idea. I have this great idea and I am spent countless hours to execute and to show the world, here, look at all of my effort. Look at what I was able to accomplish. And here's this dipshit coming in going, I got a cool idea. I'll say something and press a button. And that stuff, and I'll have art stolen from other people who did spend all that time on it, cut and pasted into some semblance of something that looks attractive to the uninitiated. And I'll have people pat me on the back and say how great and wonderful I am and how amazing that work is, even though I didn't do anything. And they'll give me money for not doing anything. I mean, what level of sociopathy is that? I mean, it's just, do they really think there's enough money in an artist alley to support that? Artist alleys are tough. We work really, really hard and we struggle and, to make bills to pay bills and to pay for it. And we worked tirelessly for this. You're going to step in there and say, haha, I can do this, I don't have to put in all the time. Like, yes, I've got a great business model. Fuck you and your business model. This is a community of people who literally care about each other and about what we've gone through and all the effort we put into this. Ramifications. After that person was kicked out, signs were put up. Other artists went over to that blank table and put out art signs that said, this artist has been kicked out for using AI art. A bunch of other signs. Then apparently, and then that went viral, especially in the art community, and it spread around. Well, since then, at least no less than 3 other conventions have issued public statements saying the same thing will happen to you if you show up and try to sell AI art. We need more of that, a lot more of that, because again, it's a community, and the conventions that care are part of that community. Conventions, pop culture conventions, sci-fi, fantasy, they're almost always run by fans. Okay. Comic book conventions, not so much. Why? Comic book conventions used to be run by fans, but as soon as Hollywood started making billions of dollars with their movies, then accountants started coming in, buying up all the Comic Cons and saying, ooh, I can now make money. And I can pretend that I'm part of the movie industry. And they come in and they run these conventions, and they don't run them for the fans. They don't run them for the community of the comic books. They run them for ticket sales and for booth sales, for profits. You can tell the ones that are still run by fans because they will literally come to the booths. They will come to, fans at the booths, and they'll say, what can we do to make this better? They will select they will curate who's displaying based on people, who's contributing the most to the community. That means that they're not going to have the exact same booth there 50 times. That they're not going to have a gigantic 30 by 30 booth selling car insurance in the middle of something. Um, it, of course, it's hard for them to control that, you know, if they got extra space. But you know, and at places like Dragon Con and Gen Con, that they're very careful to curate who's there, why they're there, because they care about the fan experience. They care about the community, and the art community is just part of that. Because everyone at these pop culture conventions sees art. They got drawn into it from the art. No one just went, "Ooh, a lizard with wings. That's cool." No. They saw a painting of a dragon with wings. They saw a film with a dragon breathing fire. They've read books about them. They've experienced this relationship, and then they go, "I want to know who painted that. I want to know who did that. Oh my god, the person who wrote that is here. The artist who did that is here." That's the collectors community. In fine art, you can get that too, but it's more regional. I mean, if you're in Miami, you're going to meet the Miami collectors. They'll probably know each other. You may meet them all at a gallery opening. I haven't, I've only mildly experienced that. Um, in the convention community where you're selling art, there are, these collectors come from all over the world for these conventions because they're huge fans. And they love it when they meet people who actually make their fandom. and, you know, and then they go the next mile. These communities, the art families, and even including collectors, that when we need help, we'll help each other. Part of our booth display is missing or broken. They've got tools. They have extras. They'll loan them. You need an extra tablecloth. Somebody will have an extra tablecloth. You need a piece of tape. Someone will have a piece of tape. That you need to ship something in at an emergency, and your hotel suddenly won't take it. There'll be someone who lives locally who will say, "Yeah, ship it to my house overnight. I'll bring it to you tomorrow." There will be somebody there who can do it, who will be willing to. That you're going to a new convention you've never been before, and you can't afford the hotel room, or something went wrong with the hotel room, or something. Somebody will have a place for you to stay, or help recommend a place. They'll work something out. I flew to one convention recently, and I flew home to a city. I flew home, but that city is still several hours driving from home. But in a couple weeks, I have a convention in that city. We just put out a call to say, "Hey, is there anybody who lives in the city who can hold on to a couple boxes of art for us so we don't have to bring them home, bring them back?" Sure enough, someone's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." They're not even a fan or collector of ours. They're just part of the community. And like, "Yeah, sure." You know, it got bounced around. And so, like, yeah, they love the community. They love art, that that's a great story for them. That's where they get paid. Yes, we're going to treat them well, when I go back, but, as a thank you. But, they're just there to help. The number of times people will just tip an artist because they appreciate them so much. Or, Echoes has her birthday at Dragon Con every single year. Invariably, sorry, like I said, I'm sick. Um, so art is a way of life. It's not a lifestyle. That And this is what makes it so important that AI tools and things get clamped down on, because there are people who think that, oh, it's just a job. It's not a job. No, I know no one who went into art going, "Oh, this is a stable job. I want to do that. I can do this and I can make money." Worse, I've seen many people leave the art world because they can't make any money. And it's invariably because they don't have the passion to push through it. They don't have the vision that connects with a collector base, that they have family that won't support them. They are just afraid. I mean, you can make a living at it, but it takes time, but you also have to be ready for that community. You have to join it. You have to become a part of it. But it's the people who think, "Oh, art is just a job. I'm going to sell art the way I can sell lollipops or sell gasoline." It's like, no, no, you can't. Or rather, uh, you are instantly making enemies, and not just a few, an entire community. And invariably, there's always somebody who shows up with this new brilliant idea. "Hey, let me show you something I did." And they show something AI. I'm like, "You didn't do anything. You said you read into a computer like, 'I want something like this,' and the computer solved all your problems for you. And even then, it created problems that you didn't even see." Like, the I want every artist out there to understand that you are not alone. And if you do not have a family, an art family right now, I'm sorry, but they are out there. We are out there. Okay. You just have to reach out, go where the artists are. Go to a drawing night somewhere. Go to an art gallery. Um, just don't talk to the gallery managers too much, because the gallery managers are looking for sales. But go to opening nights. Go to gallery opening nights. That Go to a convention. All right. It's usually a nominal fee, and just walk through Artist Alley and say hi. If there's someone whose art you appreciate, talk to them, say hi. If you meet your legend, okay, if you meet a legend who is your idol, say hi. And you can often ask them, "Could you look at my portfolio and tell me what I need to do to make it to the next level?" There are going to be some people who won't have time, who may not. But the vast majority of people, especially in the public circuit, are more than happy to. And some of us have connections, not just to publishers and potential clients, but to like the Illustrators of the Future competition. A number of winners have approached us. One of the winners, the grand prize winner a couple of years ago, approached Larry Elmore. And he said, "Hey, I'm passionate about art. But I've stepped away from it for 10 years because my family wasn't supportive." Sorry. My family wasn't supportive. My parents weren't supportive, so I did something else. But my wife has told me that my wife art is good enough, and that I should talk to people and find out if I can make it. Would you look at my portfolio? And Larry was like, "Yeah, of course." This is Larry Elmore, okay, one of the legends of Dungeons and Dragons art and illustration. Okay, absolute sweetheart. No problem. He's swamped in a booth. "Yeah, I'll look at it because we love art." And he went through it and said, "You need to submit to this Illustrators of the Future competition. You're good enough to win." And he almost didn't. In fact, it's not a fact. I think the story goes that Larry actually asked if he had a laptop or a phone, and like insisted he submit right then and there at the table to enter. I could be wrong, but that's the story that I recall someone telling me. It could have been exaggerated, could have been somebody else, but that happens. I would do that. Of course, once the judging comes down and I see that art, I have to recuse myself so that I don't, influence the decision. But we're gonna tell it. And and we had an artist years ago show up, and she was like almost graduating college, art school, and she showed us our stuff, and we were blown away, absolutely blown away. And she was using a technique. She was using a painting style, egg tempera, that people haven't used very much in the last couple hundred years. Used to be incredibly popular, but she was doing that, and she was doing incredible work. Just a vision, and her technique and everything was incredible. And we instantly started giving her advice. Now, she was smart enough to talk to a lot of people. We were not the only people she approached. She went to everybody who had some sort of pro connection to show her portfolio, and she got a name. And that, and she's quite well known in the industry right now. I don't feel comfortable saying her name because because I don't know her well enough to think that would be okay. I see her over the years. I say hi. I'm really proud of her. I like to be able to equate myself with just a tiny bit of her success, but she did all that work herself. She didn't need too much other than emotional support, and that's kind of all we did, despite everything else. But that's the point. We need that support, and you can do it too. On that note, let's talk about some negative experiences that happen. As I said, not everyone loves every member of their family. Um, I have only met one person who was toxic in the community, and they're no longer a part of the community, but they were toxic. They would smile and try to make friends, but it was all a charade, and that they were actively being negative and actively hurting people in the community. But that's one out of thousands. There could be another one or two. I don't know, but I've only met the one. Uh, I have met one supposed legend, um, who was a very rude customer. You know that they came to the booth, um, and looked at the art, and they just behaved like one of the most obnoxious, rude customers that I've ever met or seen. And I have lost every ounce of respect for them whatsoever. I see them around every once in a while, but I want nothing to do with them. And when I hear somebody talk about how great and wonderful they are, I instantly like know how fake they are. Like that's, okay, you've been snookered, because you can't you can't be great and wonderful to your fans and then rude to another artist, and you know without having some severe problems. I mean, everyone's going to be good to their fans because that's where you make your money. But as soon as you're rude to another artist, that is being a bad person. That is that's a bit of sociopathy, um, because we're the community. We don't need to compete against each other. You know, um, his art didn't compete with Echoes in any way. Um, we've, I have met artists that were grumpy. Okay, grump happens. They can have a really bad day. They can have a great sales day, but they've just had some massive personal issue, client, family, relationships, whatever, car accident, and just be really, really grumpy at their booth. So don't necessarily take someone being a grump as being a bad person in the community. Um, you know, I'm not gonna say to give them lots of different chances, but it's not the same thing as being but, as being, deliberately and actively rude. Um, that, there was an artist, years ago, um, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, who, seemed to have some pretty severe problems outside of being an artist. Um, that, they were a bad person to begin with, but they had a popular art style that, and got a lot of respect from the art community until they physically attacked a fan in the middle of a convention. Literally tackled this person through the ground and started beating them up. The person was kicked out of the convention and pretty much blacklisted from every convention. And every single artist was like, no, that's not good. And I know at least I literally had 4 of their works of art in my personal collection. I tore them up and threw them out. This isn't about being canceled for something. This is literally someone physically attacked the community, you know, because they didn't just attack one person for no reason. And I'm not going to go into the details, just we know for a fact that it was for no reason. Okay. That the person just had serious problems. That the these conventions are communities. Remember how I mentioned that the fans and the collectors and the artists are all part of a greater community? They attack somebody in the community. Oddly enough, a few hours before, I had on that same day, I went over and talked to him. And for some reason, I have no idea exactly how or why. I have met in my life a number of people who are absolutely terrible people who think I am a kindred spirit and want, and am willing to hear them out and listen. And he saw me and he knew me through Echo. And I think it was, I had like a shirt on with some sort of military insignia on it from a game. And he took that to mean that I was some sort of extremely right wing person. And he said, "Thank God you're here. I need to take a walk away from this effing booth and these effing nerds. I can't." And he took, and he stepped out and he started, he wanted to walk with me. And he went on a rant saying he can't stand these effing nerds. He's at a gaming convention where he's selling art to people who play games. And he's insulting them. Not just, and he actually says, I think it was, if I have to deal with another one of these these effing geeks and listen to their something, like lectures, like somebody's autistic or talking, like it's like I'm just gonna go wail. I'm just gonna go ape shit and wail on their ass. And then he did later on. All right, was that's what I mean by saying he was a bad person with serious issues. Okay. And until I heard him talk like that, I didn't know. No, it seemed like we had a okay relationship. You know, but again, that's one person in what 17 years of us doing shows out of thousands. And everyone rallied against that person. Everyone rallied against the other person. Found out the one person who was toxic. We had been told that person was toxic by many people, and they found out that we were, in any shape or form, you know, uh, 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 related to him because, we hung out. He hadn't shown any of those toxic things to us, but everybody else told us he was toxic. And then I witnessed him being toxic, and then I experienced being toxic. And after we distanced ourselves, we had people telling us that he was being toxic to us behind our backs. Again, so the community is there, and we protect ourselves. We do. So if you're an artist, and, yes, there are going to be artists in various ways that are going to be competitive. Some, there are going to be those that are toxic. There are going to be those for whatever reason. But the vast majority of us are completely supportive of each other. There are also artists out there who just do art to sell. Do art to sell. And you know what? As long as they aren't pushing a button on AI and they're creating the art themselves, good. I personally am not a consumer of fan art. I'm just not. But I appreciate when someone is bringing something new to the fandom. They'll take they'll do a new take on a fan, some sort of fandom, a character or something that's cool. If all they're doing is, if there's an actor who's being paid millions of dollars because of how they look and how they've trained, and then they're given a hairdresser who gives them a $3,000 haircut, and then someone else who gives them a $10,000 makeup job that was decided on by 13 designers and artists in a group with test makeups, and then put in front of a camera, and the photograph is taken by a world-class photographer with the best equipment in the world. And then that photograph is selected out of 500 others taken at that moment because it just happened to be the 250th of a second that was the best out of all of them. And some artist in Artist Alley takes that photograph and just redraws it. I don't respect that. And there's a lot of those artists out there. But it still shows skill. It shows care. It shows that they're trying, that they are, they have the skill to reproduce this. It's just barely better than AI that copies it and spits it out. Those artists exist. Those people are just there for a paycheck, and trying to turn what the skill that they have into money. And I'm not going to criticize people because there are people like I, as an artist, do not have a personal vision of how I want art to be. I have a natural style, but I'm not trying to communicate a particular vision. As an author, I do. I have a message that I want to get across about how people behave and about how stories should be, and what is drama, and what the way I wish things could be resolved. I have a story that I want to tell. That's where I get my personal, deep-hearted message out in writing, but not in art. So I understand that there are artists who have skills, but they don't have a particular point of view to share, and they're going to use that skill to make money with. You are allowed to do that. I would wish you would find something else to do than simply rote copy what some studio spent millions of dollars making, and then claiming it's your own. But it's, you know, it's not the worst. But then you're gonna find people who like that, and that will be those people. You will have a relationship with different than with relationship like me. That and at the same time, I will still respect you and those people enough to defend them against someone who's literally Xerox copying somebody else, or using a computer to generate an image of Doctor Who. I would rather have you show the world how good you are at copying a photograph with charcoal than show the world how good you are at saying, I want a picture of Doctor Who. Press button. Because I know that was not hard. That was not easy for you to do, to copy. That was something that you put into it. And maybe you're doing that in between while trying to sell your own stuff. I've seen a number of artists, at Artist Alley, and they will have their portraits of Doctor Who and Spider-Man stuff, and then they'll have their section of their own personal art that they want to get out. And one pays for the other. There are more people who will buy a picture of Doctor Who than will buy a picture of their own personal art. Nigel Sod has been on the show a number of times, and pardon me, and he is a licensed seller of, a lot of Starship graphics, Star Wars, Star Trek, a lot of them. But he still does his own paintings. He has a degree in philosophy. He has a particular opinion and point of view about the world, and he still shows his paintings and still sells them. They're not the majority of his booth, but he has them. And he has a very particular aesthetic to painting these starships. So he's not just painting the same photograph that Star Trek TNG used of the Enterprise D. No, he has a unique vision on how that should appear. And that's how he ended up, and he paints them, and his family works with him, and they paint them with, and he oversees it. And he's created art in a way that can't be denied. So I don't look at, and he uses the one to support the other. He has for a long time. He was selling his own art, with smatterings of pop culture things. He hit upon the Starship graphics, which are really, really good, and has a huge fan. That's great. But he hasn't stopped doing his own stuff. So don't stop doing your own stuff, because that could sell. And then, yes, you might sell one of those works per show, but that's a fan of your soul. And those people are instantly a part of your family. That's the great thing about connection between artists and collectors. That someone came into the gallery a couple months ago and looked around and said, why does anyone buy this? I'm like, excuse me? He's like, I look at it and I see it, but I don't understand why anyone would buy something like this. I said, it's entertainment. You could see the explosions go off in his head. It's like, oh, I said, yeah, some people listen to music. Some people, and feel emotions and happy. And some people look at art and feel that way. He's like, I never thought about art as being entertainment. I said, yeah, it's like a television show or a movie, but it's just a still frame. It tells everything you need, just that still frame. But art is so varied and people are so varied that they're going to see something in it that they bond with. And if you created something that they bonded with, well, they've bonded with you. Again, this is, it's tenuous. It's something that, you'll develop over time. You'll meet more people. That's what we mean when we say you will meet your collectors. People will collect you and what you do. There are. Um, and that's what you have to nurture, you know. Some people are going to be, oh, I like that starship that you made. Some people are going to be like, I really love that how you depicted uh, uh, the trials of anorexia, or the struggles uh, of being an immigrant, a neurodivergent immigrant in the South or something. You're going to meet people, and it could be an intellectual connection, it could be an emotional connection, but the fact that they have spent money on you is something that is incredibly valuable, to your soul. And, you know, those are the people that you will collect, and over time, they will be part of your art family. As an author, I kind of miss this. As an author, I have to write my story, and they have to purchase it before reading it. And then after they read it, I have to hope that they come back to me and tell me that they appreciated it. Art, they see it, they appreciate it, they buy it. And the praise comes with purchasing it. So, and in music, it's something similar. It's something people may hear it the first time, then spend money on it. They may spend money on it to hear it the first time, but it's still a pretty instantaneous reaction. So your families with your friends and musicians, musicians struggle because they have to, fight over venues. There's more musicians than are venues available, so there's can be some conflict there. But generally, I think musicians are supportive of each other. Authors, it's also a community, but it's again, it's a little bit different. Um, that um, but I'm not experienced enough to go into too much into detail over that. But art communities, art families, we are tight. We support each other, and that's the entire point of this channel. Is we're just one facet of the art community who's trying to reach out and give, and hopefully bring more people in. So thank you very much. This has been Lazarus Chernik. I am Lazarus Chernik, guest hosting for Echo on the Professional Artist, episode 62. You have been listening to the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 out of New Orleans, simulcast on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever fine art is sold. Wherever great art is sold. I'm working on it. It's Echo's channel, though, so it doesn't matter. Thank you.